Okay, so let's get started. Let's see here. All right. Hi, everyone. Today we have Karlie Briggs, who is the Senior Customer Success Manager at Elate. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about the evolution of the customer success role, both in how she's seen it at the companies that she's worked at, but also just the customer success role at large. So how has it evolved over time? So welcome, Karlie.
Hi, welcome. Hello, everyone. It's good to
Yeah.
be here. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of share my perspective here on the role, but thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So yeah, I think the best place to start would be how you got into customer success. On my end, it seems like there's so many different ways to get into that role. I've seen people start in support roles and move in that direction. I've seen folks who have been in sales for a really long time and decided they then wanted to switch things up. So I'm curious how you got into the role of customer success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was on the hunt. To give a little backstory, I kind of started in more of like marketing, events, project management. But at the roles I had prior to getting into tech, I was really kind of serving internal customers with my role. And if I think about like all the work that I did and the thread that kind of pulls through, it was working with people, building relationships, whether it was, making trifold brochures at the children's hospital or building patient education or whatever that may have been in my past life. It was incredible to really truly build relationships with people and help get to like what's the why, what are we doing, how can we do it in a way that's really human. So it was, I think back in like 2014, 2015, I was looking for kind of what was next. And Indianapolis at the time was booming with, tech. And I was just like, I want to get into tech. And I just kind of looked at like, what's my skill set? Okay, I love, serving customers. I love problem solving. I love building relationships. And so I was introduced to Lessonly at the time, which was really, really small, just getting off the ground. And I remember, "Oh, it's not right now. We're not looking to hire." At first they were like, "How about sales?" And I said, "No, I don't want to do sales." And then they came back to me and were like, "We think you'd be a really good fit for this role, customer success." And I was like, "I don't know what that is. That's really new to me." But when I kind of looked at like, all right, what am I really good at? I really want to be in tech. I was up for the learning curve of learning, training and development, working with those types of experts. And so I kind of took a leap into tech. Lessonly at the time, I think I was employee like 8 or 9 or something crazy. So joining kind of that ground floor, building exactly what we wanted this role to look like, with my leader at the time, Corey, and just saying like, what do we want this experience to look like? Being a part of a startup back in those times was, it just feels like the olden days at this point, but
Hmm.
it's just so incredible to be able to bring kind of, my energy and my expertise of building relationships to the role and say, how do we make people feel heard and cared for and supported throughout their journey and trusting us with their, training and development efforts at the time. So it was really, really exciting to be part of tech in Indy at that time and have them kind of take a chance on me to move industries. So that's kind of how
Yeah,
I got into it. But yeah, I
that's
don't know if there's
awesome.
anything there you want to dig into, but that was a lot.
No, I love the transition from trifold brochures to like
Yeah.
booming tech and indie. And, having started my career in tech probably around the same time in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
it was exciting because I think it really put Indianapolis on the map in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Um, in a very unexpected way, because I don't think people hear Indianapolis and think tech.
Right.
So
Right.
that was cool. I mean, I think that's really interesting. I'm really curious when you started at Lessonly. Well, first of all, it's really awesome that you were able to develop a role so collaboratively in that way.
Mhm.
That I feel like that just speaks volume to indie in general, because I feel like
Yes.
that's just such a natural component of work in that city, which
Yeah.
is like, let's just, work together to think of a role that suits you, and that's awesome. But I am curious how how that looked different from the sort of like interactions and relationships that you were building before that. Like obviously the technology side had a learning curve, but were there new skill sets that you had to develop
Mhm.
when you stepped into a customer success role at a tech company that were sort of outside of the relationship building, the marketing, things like that? Like what were some of the, I guess, like the biggest challenges in that transition?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was an entirely new language, right? Like you really
Mm-hmm.
do like the all the relationship stuff, the communication, all of that was kind of came to me as second nature, right? But it was truly learning like the industry, trying to become an expert. And I think that's a really key challenge is like you have this core fundamental base of skills, right? As a customer success manager, I like to think of it as like you've got your suitcase and you've got all of your essentials, like, you have all of that, as you kind of carry it through your career, through your journey. But then as you move into different industries, you're learning about the different personas. So that's something, how do I work with at the time training and development managers? How do they operate? Like, you know, just learning all of that knowledge. And then the flip side was learning, because I did wear every single hat for the customer success role at Lessonly, was like, how do I learn about all of the tech? How do I learn about product? How do I learn the ins and outs and becoming a product expert?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's truly what kind of sets you apart is, being able to make recommendations and best practices and like what we've seen work. And that takes time, right? But I think it's like layering on kind of those two areas when you get into a new role is really key, and it's challenging. I remember asking like, what's an API? Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
cloud? Like, what are these things? Like,
Yeah.
what's a data warehouse? Like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to know all of this information to be able to speak intelligently to a customer and guide them on this journey, right? So I can build trust with them and make recommendations along the way that are best for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot to learn.
That is a lot. I mean, I think out of any role, maybe maybe support is included in this, but I would say out of any role, customer success just really has to have such not only like a wide span of knowledge of what you're selling, but also like deep questions, like because you're at that point where you're troubleshooting problems,
Right.
or you're potentially like selling something
Yes.
new, and then you have to understand the subject matter of the industry that you're in, which changes with each job that you're in. And so
Yes.
it's not like, I mean, obviously marketing, which is my background, you obviously have to know quite a bit of what you're
Mhm.
selling, but the large majority of it is like knowing marketing strategy and just sort of layering that on top of whatever
Mhm.
the industry or practice that you're sharing with folks. But customer success, man, you're just like so investigative on every little thing,
Yeah.
and you have to have a little bit of product knowledge, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, a little bit of relationship building. And on top of that, like project managing, because you have
Yes.
all of these different people that you're collaborating with, which is wild. Like that's just like a wild thing that I'm learning about the customer success role.
Yes.
And it takes a very patient and like skilled person to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I would also add to that, like I remember being asked like, how do you do with change? Like,
mm,
how do you feel about like living in the gray? Because it truly is like, especially in tech, customer success, like a small startup, like we have like the product changes literally hourly. Like
Mm,
there could be new
mm-hmm.
things from the last call I was on this morning to like an hour ago of like, oh my gosh, things were released. I mean, I know about them, but it's like you've got to be able to like be really nimble, be really flexible, like be okay with living in the gray and not just kind of not knowing, what's going to happen. So I think that there's also that element of flexibility and just kind of like, yeah, it's going to change. Like it's
Yeah.
going to change minute by minute, hour by hour, like, who you're talking to, the product. Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you find that at Elate or just like now in general, are things moving faster than they were when you started in this role, or has it always sort of been this constant shift in things at a place you're working?
Yeah, I would say at this stage, it's
Hmm.
definitely
Yeah.
really, really fast paced. And you just have to be okay with like, you just have to be okay, like kind of
Yeah.
gray and not knowing and being flexible. And yeah, I would say it kind of slows down, as you get bigger and the
Hmm.
hats kind of come off. And then
Hmm.
you have more of one hat. Like I remember at Lessonly, like having really difficult conversations around like, because you do want to own everything at this stage, right? Like there's
Hmm.
a sense of pride and ownership of kind of knowing, being a product expert, being, services for that matter, like you're kind
Hmm.
of doing all of these different things for your customer. But I remember having difficult conversations like, we need help. We need someone to take these parts and pieces and peel them off so I can focus on the core of like what I'm supposed to be, which is renewals, upsells,
Hmm.
building those relationships and getting really good engagement with the customer. So there comes a time where you have to have those hats kind of come off and roles need to be filled. And so as you get larger and the responsibilities kind of become more niche,
Hmm.
I think things start to slow down, but in different ways.
Hmm. Yeah, so I just came back from the Customer Success Festival, and one thing that was mentioned, there were a lot of things, a lot
Yeah.
of folks that were struggling right now with all of the major cuts and just a decline in resources.
Mhm.
And it seemed like the popular question to ask some of the speakers there was, how do you start that conversation of cross collaboration? Like, how do you get other team members who are also probably fatigued with their responsibilities to
Mhm.
take off, like to take some of those hats to help the customer success team? Like,
Mhm.
how have you found it? I guess, like, how do you start that conversation with other folks?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that the organizations that I've joined have been extremely customer centric. So I
Mm,
think it honestly starts with like the leadership of
mhm,
like, this is a value, this is a priority, making sure that we are thinking about the customer every step of the way, thinking about our end users. So I feel like I've been very spoiled and like people have always cared about that around,
mhm,
in the organizations that I've worked at, which is, I'm finding out, quite rare. um,
mhm, mhm,
but I think the number one relationship I can think of to build that cross collaboration with for customer success, at least that I have found, is with product team.
mhm,
Um, really building an ongoing cadence with someone on the product team to understand, you know, build that, I guess, like bridge or that open the door to customer feedback in
mhm,
a way that's like, we are giving feedback. They are open to receiving the feedback, pushing back when necessary. But I think when you're kind of rooted in your values as an organization, you can lean on that language to say, like, you know, at Elate, as an example, we prioritize radical simplicity. So having
mhm,
that language to say, like, well, this feedback doesn't really fit radical simplicity, but we're open to this discussion and trying to figure something out. Like knowing that you have that common language, I think really, really helps. root you in that discussion and that cross collaboration.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, that makes sense. That's amazing. And yeah, it is very rare to have such a customer centric leadership team, which is strange to say out loud.
yes, it is. It seems
Um,
very very wrong in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I just think that's the ultimate like golden key to success is like, yeah,
definitely. I
yeah,
agree. I agree. The customer feedback, that was another really hot topic at the Customer Success
I
Festival.
bet.
So there was a panel of folks who led CS teams and the panel was specifically about cross collaboration. The hottest topic was among product and CS teams, product teams feeling like those folks are just dumping feedback on them.
Yeah.
And it's really unmotivating and uninspired because they always just feel like they're doing something wrong.
Yes.
However, like that customer feedback needs to be given. So I'm curious, like how you do that. Like what tools are you using, or what processes have you put in place that make that communication really helpful and smooth?
Yeah. Well, something I love about Elate is our product leader. I remember in the interview process, like really, really like leaning into like, how is this done?
Mm,
What is the feedback process like? What does this relationship look like in your mind? Because that to me, as I said, is like the number one relationship I think that you can forge. Um, to just like really understand like the roadmap and speak intelligently to like where we're going as an organization, but also like have that relationship to feel safe giving feedback.
mm-hmm,
So something that we do that I think works really well is we meet the customer success team and our product leader meet weekly, which is pretty great that he
mm-hmm,
carves time out for our team. The meeting is structured with like, here's what was released, here's what's coming, let's talk about feedback. So it's kind of segmented in three different areas. So we feel like we're up to speed with anything new that's coming. Or even like, hey, we gave this feedback, we're actually implementing it, it's on the roadmap or coming soon. And I think just having that like open dialogue where rather than just like I submitted a ticket with feedback, it's like,
sure.
okay, well, there is a time and a place for that type of feedback, but I think when it's um, you're able to discuss it and come with the why behind it, I think that it really creates a rich dialogue between the two teams and
Mm-hmm,
builds that trust.
yeah.
Um, and it's not to say that like every piece of feedback is taken, which is
Mm-hmm,
not the ideal state for that meeting, right? It's to open up the communication so we can be customer centric and focus on um, what our customers are saying, and build a product that's for them.
mm-hmm,
Uh, so yeah, I
yeah,
think that's something that works really, really well for us.
yeah.
Uh, is that just kind of like ongoing open door policy of like, I know on Tuesdays I come with my feedback, I come with my whys, like I know I'll get updates on where we're headed and why. And I think it's just
Mm-hmm.
really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, do you filter any of that feedback? Are you hearing, certain things from customers and deciding which pieces of feedback are communicated? And if so, like how do you decide that? I know that's like a very sort of like nitty-gritty detail, but
Yeah.
I am just like so curious about what that looks like because I think for folks that I've met, though it's in those details that really matter to them as to how they can make that process smoother.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, like, are you filtering things when you go to those meetings on Tuesday with your product team?
Yeah. Typically, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer how we do it, but it's usually like kind of on a feature base. So, like, for example, we just had a big feature release where we had like a beta and all of that. And we had like one specific section for like all the nitty gritty, like feedback on that specific
Okay.
feature. And the expectation was set like if you have feedback on this particular feature, you put it here, we will discuss it. And before we actually like roll this out, publicly, as a release, we're going to try to work out some of these like pieces of feedback, and knowing like it wasn't going to be perfect. So using that like beta time. Um, I think it's also, yeah, up to the customer success manager to kind of filter by like what is going to be really helpful and relevant and almost like solve a problem for the broader good, rather than this is like a niche one-off
Mm-hmm.
nitpicky thing that the customer is asking for
Mm-hmm.
that I know is not rooted in our product principles. I know that we're not going to do it, but at least listening to them, hearing them out, like, and just being as transparent as possible. But it is kind of segmented out. We put it into like a sheet. I mean, we're so small, we can still use a sheet, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like the feature, what kind of core feature does this feedback support? Who was the customer? Who's the CS manager? And he's able to kind of like filter by like those different criteria, which helps him.
Gotcha.
And then
Is
like populate them together as, if it's one particular thread that we're hearing feedback on, like, okay, now we've heard this 8 times.
mm,
Maybe this is something we need to revisit or problem solve or have deeper discussions with the customer on by bringing the product team in, uh,
mm.
is something that we also prioritize, getting
Yeah, you,
clarity
you read
on
my
the why.
mind. I was just going to ask you if the product team then ever goes to the customer to have more discussions about that feedback.
Yes, we also have call recording software. So there's a lot of times where I'll be like, I want you to listen to this right from the customer, and they
Mm-hmm.
make time to prioritize that to understand the why. I think is really, really important too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that piece. And then even like being really proactive around like, we're thinking about this particular feature. Let's jump on a call and see, like, kind of validate like where we're headed. We have a specific group of people that we usually reach out to for that, to tap,
Mm-hmm.
where we trust their feedback. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
amazing. It sounds like you said it's everything that you do is really grounded in key principles, which sort of serves as this framework for you, and you know
Mhm.
where to put things, and you have, the scheduled meetings. I'm curious, sounds like you guys are doing a lot of things right at Elate, and I'm curious, are there any things that your CS team, or just in general, are sort of struggling to figure out, whether that is internal processes or it's you know, feature planning and feedback, and how, like, what are some things that maybe you guys are working on there?
Mm. Um, I think that it's like the product side of the house, I feel like is very like buttoned up and organized, and I feel like really confident about everything that's happening on that side of the house. Like from a product and engineering perspective, I think for us it's like, how do we scale humans and keep the
Mm,
service at the level that we want it to be at? And that's something that we uh worked on at Lessonly too. Like, how do we keep this experience extremely human, being able to serve the customers in the way we want to serve them in a thoughtful way, I think is the piece that we're just like, all right, how do we do this? Because our business it's strategic planning software. So it's very much, you're dealing with a lot of really busy C-suite people, right? So it's like, all right, we want to make the most of their time, but also um, be really relational and customized to their experience. So I think that's what we're trying to navigate right now, is like, how do we scale the people and the human side of it?
hmm. What were some of the things that you did to maintain that at Lessonly as you grew? And also just maybe a little bit about, um, I know you said that you were like ninth or 10th employee at Lessonly. How long were you there, and how big was the team when you departed? And I'm just curious, like, what that evolution looked like, as well as like parallel to that, how did
Yeah.
you maintain that quality of relationships with your customers?
Yeah. I think I kind of alluded to it earlier, but as as we were getting bigger, it was like peeling off those
Right.
hats, and like
Mhm.
we added services, we added someone to kind of help support in sales, we had a support team, like, so I think it was as someone who previously owned everything, like you
Mhm.
have to be okay with letting things go to kind of grow and, be better and let people own their area of expertise. And so it was very much an exercise in communication, clear communication, asking clarifying questions, making sure people were on the right calls when they needed to be. So it wasn't easy. And I don't think we had it, totally figured out. But I
Mhm.
think the thing that remained constant was like, your service will not change. You will always have access to us. We will always be human on the other end of the line to figure something out for you.
Mhm.
So we kind of showed up to every call with like, the team, if you will, that was supporting the account. So I think we did a really, really good job of continuing to keep that human experience while like me maybe taking a step back on the areas where I was kind of owning all of that
Mhm.
previously. So it was more of like an exercise in internal trust and communication and figuring things out on our end. So the customer felt like it was a really seamless experience.
Yeah, that is very challenging. It's so challenging.
Really hard.
One to let go of like these things that you managed, even though we're probably worn out and
Yes.
totally burnt out by owning all those things. It's just really hard to let that go. And so I imagine you were probably like were you involved in like the hiring process for those other folks, or I'm
Yeah,
curious.
the
Okay.
interview process for
Yeah,
sure. Just like from a culture perspective.
sure.
Yeah. So it was, I think you kind of understand like, all right, can this person move really fast? Are they, eager? Do they have a service mindset or servant
Hmm.
mindset? And someone that's okay with kind of like sharing relationships. And so you get a pretty good feel for the type of personality that's going to thrive in the chaos.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, yeah, it was fun to be a part of the interviews. And yeah, to answer your question, I was there all the way through the acquisition with
Hmm.
Lessonly. So
Okay.
I think we ended up, I want to say it was around almost 200 people, 150
Hmm.
people. Like it grew quite a bit. So I was there for almost
Hmm.
8 years, and it was uh it was really, really special. And so I think what I took from that journey was like, you have to be able to be flexible and
Hmm.
let people help and trust that they're doing the right thing for the customer, which is, it can be hard, right? When you've been doing something for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm curious, just kind of stepping back a little and perhaps observing customer success, just like the role of customer success at large. What do you anticipate will change about this role, if anything, moving forward into the future, knowing that, right now the space is a little weird with a lot of the, cuts across departments and a lot of pressure on everyone to own a little bit more. But looking into the future, I am curious what your thoughts are as far as like just the evolution of the
Mm.
role of customer success.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a crystal ball, it'd be pretty cool.
I probably wouldn't ask
Looking,
this question if I had a crystal ball. There'd
yeah,
probably be a
right.
lot of other.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from my seat and where I sit, you see a lot of like automation coming into play with AI, chat GPT, all of these things that are like trying to make people's lives easier and better and move faster and reduce resources, right? I think there will be an element of some things being more automated, right? Like, I don't know, just creating contracts or just those like mundane everyday tasks that you have to do, or,
Mhm.
CRM work, like things like that.
Mhm.
Um, Note taking, recommendations. I think a lot of those types of like day-to-day tasks we as CS have to kind of deal with that will be automated, um, hopefully, and help us make us move faster and be more intelligent with our
Mm-hmm.
conversations and prepare us more. The thing that I don't see going away that I think you can kind of tell like the companies that do it well and are consistently doing it are truly keeping that human element.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is going to continue to shine through and hopefully still be a thread that or something that people prioritize as a company, because I just feel like those are the companies that people want to work with. They want to work with the human, they want to have a conversation, they want to meet other customers that are doing what they're doing. I do not think, no matter how much time goes by or into the future, that that relationship connection piece is going to go away. I think that people are actually more hungry for that now than ever. And I think
Mm.
if we're looking to the future, I think doubling down on like, how are we truly investing in these relationships on a human level, while maybe automating some of more of those like tasks and things in the future. I think those are going to be the companies that stand out from my perspective.
No, I would agree. Grounding in those relationships, it will become apparent. I mean, you
Yes.
do see all of the automated AI responses, and you can already tell. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, it just feels like doesn't feel good.
Yeah. People want to work with people, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think there's so many software companies and everything's so
Hmm.
saturated at this point. Like, I think the differentiator is going to be continuing to drive those human moments and those human
Hmm.
elements. And people are people, right? Like,
Hmm.
they're a human outside of work too. So I think people that put emphasis on that, like,
Hmm.
I think is help people grow in their role. That's something I was really proud of at Lessonly, was building a community of thought leaders called Lamination, which was really cool. But being able to like give people space to grow in their role. And yeah, we're a software company. We have a ton of competitors, but what made us different was that we invested in them as people, and that in the long run makes them more engaged customers. It makes them more loyal customers. And I just think that there's nothing that will ever replace that.
Definitely. Well, I feel like that's a really great place to end our conversation, just on a high note like that. I think the future does look bright for those who are prioritizing those relationships and that human element. And it is odd that that will become like the challenging part, like to just maintain that. But I think companies like Elate and what we're doing at Pano,
Yeah,
those relationships are just at our core function of building really great products and having a truly like win-win situation, a win for the customer, a win for our business, and just being able to kind of have that exchange always just feels really good. So
it does
yeah,
feel really
yeah,
good. And yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll add there is like,
sure.
especially we at Elate think about like, we have this slide that we use and it's people, process, and solution. And you have to have all three of those things to be successful really in anything in life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But I think it's especially true for software companies. Like, you can have the process and the solution, but if you don't have the
Mm-hmm.
people to champion or, to build those relationships and yeah, become an advocate, I think, you have to have all three legs of the stool. So I love what you said about that. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Karlie.
yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
you chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All righty. Bye-bye.